Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to learn a little bit more about play attention and how we can customize a neurocognitive training plan to strengthen executive function. More importantly, we want to come together today to chat about executive function and really discuss the root cause of some challenges that we have. And I hope that you walk away with some strategies and perhaps a new perspective when thinking about executive function. So, just a couple of notes before we get started. One, we are recording this event. So, tomorrow you will receive a webinar replay in your email. That way, you can share the webinar recording with any family members or staff members who perhaps could not attend today. Also, I do love these webinars to be interactive because this is your time. So please do interact with me using the chat box. I'll have some questions throughout this time together. But anytime you have questions or comments you want to share, please do use that chat box because your comments and questions really do enhance everyone's experience here today. So, again, today we're going to be talking about executive function, which is a big term for something we all use every day, all day long. Executive function helps us start tasks, stay focused, control impulses, manage our time, remember what we're doing, handle emotions, and follow through. And when executive function is weak or inconsistent, life can start feeling harder than it should, actually. And you may see this in your own child who seems to know what needs to be done, but has a really hard time getting started. Or maybe you see it in yourself and you think, I have all of these great ideas, but I seem to struggle in the details. I have the big ideas, but I can't get anything done. Or you may, if you're here as a professional, you may have clients who try really hard, but daily life still seems scattered and stressful. So, can any of you relate to that? Why are you here today? You can use the chat box. Can you relate to your child knowing what to do, but having a hard time starting? Or maybe you're the big picture person in the company, but you have a hard time following through with the details? Yeah, some of you are raising your hands using the raise your hand icon. That's right. It's so very common. And so today, Stacy says, OMG, that is me. Exactly. So I'm glad you're here, Stacy, because we're going to really talk in depth today and make certain that our discussion is not about blaming effort. Because, in fact, many people with ADHD and executive function challenges are working incredibly hard. Do any of you get to the end of the day and you think, I've been working really hard all day long, but I just didn't get anything done? It wasn't a lack of effort. You were working, you were trying hard, but still it was challenging. So I want you to kind of reframe that. What if the problem is not effort? What if the problem is the skill system underneath that effort? That's what we're going to unpack today. So, first, I want to take a quick poll before we go any further. And I would love for you to just type in the chat box. Tell me, what is one task that takes more effort than you think it should? If you're here because you're concerned about your child, it might be homework. It may be paying bills, starting laundry, answering emails, getting out the door, finishing paperwork. Go ahead and type in. Oh, a lot of people are typing in organizing, getting started on a project. What is it? Kristen says job applications. That I can imagine. That would be difficult to just get started. What takes more effort than it should? Monica, finishing paperwork. Um, Patrice says procrastination. Anne says writing. Ashley says showering. Stacy says life. Um, Augusta says writing emails. Yep, exactly. Natalie says reading. Patricia says getting paperwork done at work. Sarah also says paperwork and filling in forms. It's interesting. I've been using Play Attention with my clients since 1996. And so for over 30 years, and I've worked with every age from 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. Right now, most of my clients are adults between the ages of 45 and 75. And what's been really interesting is that I work with a lot of teachers and counselors, nurses. They're great at their jobs, right? They're great at interacting with their clients, but it's the paperwork that is so challenging. And it looks like a lot of you here are mentioning that. It's the administrative part of the job, the filling out the forms, like Sarah says, that is the challenging part. And that takes more effort than it should. Okay. Judy says procrastination, especially if there are fun things to do. And Judy, we're going to talk a lot about procrastination because you're right. Procrastination, you bring up, well, if there's something fun, I'm going to lean towards that because procrastination is not about time management. Procrastination is about emotion regulation and how you feel about that task, how you feel about your ability to get it done. And like you said, you feel like there's something a little bit more fun going on. You might tend to go towards that. So you can see that when we're looking at all of these responses, none of these are character flaws. Not getting paperwork done, that's not a character flaw. That's not that you're not giving out that effort. Like Stacy says, she loves to do it. She puts the effort in, but she's having a hard time getting it done. So these are not signs that you don't care. Many of these challenges that you brought up are connected to executive function. So, when we talk about focus, because focus is one of those mental processes within executive function, and many times it comes down to this, right? We want to look at attention because that's critical to everything we do. It's critical and interrelated to every mental process. But when we think about focus, remember it is not just one skill, even though we constantly hear just pay attention. Or you may think to yourself, I just need to pay attention. But focus is not just one simple thing. Focus depends on several executive function skills working together. So if you look at your screen right now and you look at this team effort that's really going on, in order to focus, you have to be able to block out distractions. And that's hard, right? We hear so much about attention deficit, but attention deficit, that term is really a misnomer. You don't have a lack of attention. Your child doesn't have a complete deficit in attention, right? The difficulty most of the times is that you have great attention. The problem is you're paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So you're taking in all of that stimuli around you. A lot of my adult clients will say it's like there are a million different TV sets going on in my head at one time. So that's not a lack of attention, right? It's diffused attention where you're taking in bits and pieces of everything. So what we need to work on is how to stay focused to what's important while blocking out or filtering out all of that unnecessary stimuli. You also have to be able to hold the goal in mind, right? You have to be able to hold that goal. What is your goal? I need to finish this paperwork. I need to finish this resume. Whatever the goal is, you have to keep that in mind as your task at hand. You have to manage frustration, and that goes back to the emotion regulation part of executive function. Because when you get frustrated, and I'm certain all of you here at some point, you've become frustrated at yourself or at the task, or maybe you see your child's frustration or your client's frustration. What happens to your brain? What happens to your focus, your attention when you get frustrated? Go ahead and type in the chat box. What happens in that moment? Melanie says it's a vicious cycle. I get frustrated and then I can't focus. And I can't focus and get more frustrated. Exactly. So when that frustration starts to build, attention becomes even more challenging. Kristen says shame and guilt. Monica says, I can't think. Anne says, I freeze. Patrice says overwhelmed feeling, right? So as soon as you get that frustration, all of these other feelings and emotions start to come into play, and it becomes that more difficult to manage your attention. We also have to be able to resist our impulses, right? So that impulse control is one of those mental processes within executive function. And you may see your child or maybe even yourself when you are very impulsive, you rush through things just to get them done. That's impulsivity, right? You just impulsively rush through it to get it done. But when you do that, you make errors, you lose the details, or you impulsively decide that the laundry should be done instead of the task at hand. So you have to be able to control your impulses. You have to be able to track time, right, in order to start and complete in a timely manner. You have to be able to shift when needed because life is not perfect. We all know that, right? Stacy says life seems to be the effort. And so life is not perfect. There are times where we may be focused, and you may have that ability to hyper focus, where you are so focused, it's hard to draw you away from it. But there are times when other people need to chat with you. There are times where maybe something else needs to take priority. So you need to have that mental flexibility so that you can shift your attention. And then the next part is return to the task after either shifting or drifting. And you have to notice what matters. So think about focus as a set of skills, not just one thing. All of these executive function skills have to come together in order for you to focus. So when someone says, why can't I just focus? The real answer may be is because focus is not just focus. Focus is a team effort. And when one or more parts of that team are weak or tired or overwhelmed or underdeveloped, then daily tasks can really feel exhausting. Stacy says, do people really know how to do this? Any of these items throws me completely off task. People really do know how to control that attention. They have that cognitive control. Now, we all have those moments where we drift or we have a hard time coming back to the task at hand. But it is a skill that you can develop. And I'm going to explain how we help you develop those areas within play attention because it is truly a skill that you can develop, and you can develop all of these areas around that. So I want to ask you, and this is a quick poll. I'm going to put this poll on my screen here so that you can answer on the poll, or you can just type your answer in if you don't see the poll pop up. Which executive function skill feels hardest right now? And there may be more than the four I have listed here, but let's just look at these because these are typically our top ones. Is it getting started? Task initiation? Is it staying on task? Maybe you can get started, but then you have a hard time staying on task. Is it emotion regulation? Is it impulse control? If you had to select one, which executive function skill feels hardest right now? Is it getting started? Is it staying on task, emotion regulation, or impulse control? Okay. And I'm going to end this poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, interesting. So it looks like getting started is our winner, right? So getting started, 53% of you said that getting started is the hardest skill right now. 21% of you said staying on task. 16% said emotion regulation, and 11% said impulse control. So getting started, staying on task, emotion regulation, impulse control. That was the order in which people saw that it was a little bit challenging. And that shows us that executive function challenges do not look the same for everyone. For one person, it's getting started. For another, it's controlling that impulsivity. That's why when we look at developing skills, a one size fits all approach simply falls short. We need to understand your personal pattern before we can create a plan. And we can look at that pattern. So if you think about your own executive function, or if you are considering your child or your client, and you think, you know what, I really don't know which areas of executive function are most important for me to work on. If I looked at an overall scale, what would that look like for me? So we have a great executive function assessment. And I just put up a graph. This is a graph that actually one of my clients just completed their executive function questionnaire. And this is the graph it gives us. And I really like this. It gives, of course, a detailed text report as well. But I love this graphical form. It gives us that baseline, a starting point. So you'll notice that executive function on the very top is extremely difficult. If we look at overall executive function for this individual, it's extremely difficult. And then it breaks it down into all of the mental processes, prioritizing, impulse control, organizing. So we can look at each mental process within executive function. And we get a graph that shows us, is this extremely difficult? Is it moderately difficult? Or is it not difficult at all? When we can have a report and look at your executive function profile, that allows us to gain the insights we need to customize your plan. Because, like we said, a one size fits all approach will not work. We have to really look at you as an individual, recognize your strengths, look at the areas we want to improve in order to customize your plan. So, if you are interested in getting a little bit deeper into your executive function and not just simply going by how you feel about your executive function or your child's executive function, we can offer you the executive function assessment. Now, this assessment is a questionnaire. I would plan on it taking about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. There are 23 questions in all. And then at the end, like I said, we'll receive a full report, and it will have the graphs, and then it will also have the raw data and a text outline of your report. And it gives us your executive function profile so that we can customize a plan. If you're interested in that, you can type in assessment and we'll send you the details to get started on the assessment process. Now, keep in mind that if you do the assessment, we do need about a 30-minute block of time for a feedback session to review those results with you. Now, each executive function assessment is $50, but we are running that summer special that many of you saw this week, which is 20% off. So, really a great value when you are trying to not just look at effort or thinking that it's a lack of effort, but you're trying to get to the root cause and start developing a plan. So, if you'd like more information on how to go through that assessment process, like I said, just go ahead and type in assessment and we will get back in touch with you. Now, again, if you would like to get that up and going pretty quickly, we will need a date of birth because those assessments are norm referenced. So if you wanted to just type in a date of birth, or we'll follow up with you for that information in order to get you registered. Now, please don't just raise your hand. Some of you are just raising your hand because we won't have record of who raised their hand at what time. So you would actually have to type in assessment in the chat box, or a date of birth for yourself or your client or your child, so that we can get you the details and get your assessment over to you. Okay. So again, that's a great way to get that profile because I asked you what feels the hardest right now, but this will give us a detailed profile. So way I like to think about executive function is it's the brain's management system. I often describe it as the part of the brain that helps run the show. It helps you answer questions like, what do I need to finish first? What should I ignore? How long should this take? What do I do when I get frustrated, right? Have that plan when you get frustrated. How do I keep going if the task is boring, right? Someone here said it's really hard when there's other fun things to do. What do I remember, or how do I remember, I should say, the next steps? How do I stop myself before I act too quickly? When executive function is working well, then daily life seems more manageable. When it's not working well, people look, and this is the key here, people look like they're unmotivated. They look distracted, emotional, forgetful, disorganized, or oppositional. But underneath those behaviors, underneath what they appear to look like, underneath those behaviors, there's often a skill or multiple skills that need support. And this is where many people get stuck. They fall into what I call the effort trap. The effort trap sounds like this: try harder, pay attention, stop forgetting, just start. Calm down, use your planner, be more responsible. Now, how many of you have heard those things or you may have said them to someone else? Do they sound familiar? Does that trap sound familiar? Oh, Stacy. Yes, Judy says both. I've said it and I've been on the receiving end. Monica says yes. Pay attention, try harder, just get started, right? Now, you may have said these, or someone may have said those things to you with good intentions. But if the brain does not yet have the skill to do those things consistently, and the key is consistently, then more pressure does not solve the problem. Like Eliza said, yes, I hear that so much, but they don't understand, right? And Eliza, when they just simply put more pressure on you, does that solve the problem? What's the end result when you hear, try harder, just finish, just use your planner? What happens? That's right. Exactly. Many of you are saying, more stress. Mo says more frustration. Stacy has a green emoji. Exactly. Right. Melanie says I walk away. Ashley says extreme overwhelm. Exactly. So Monica says feel overwhelmed. So adding stress is not going to solve the problem, right? Because stress is not friendly to attention. As we mentioned early, stress, trying harder, anxiety is not conducive to good attention. When the brain is stressed, overwhelmed, attention becomes harder. Working memory becomes weaker. Self control becomes more difficult. All of these mental processes within executive function becomes much more difficult when stress occurs. So the person tries harder, gets more frustrated, and then feels like they failed again. This is the cycle that we want to interrupt. Okay. Eliza says this doesn't work at all, and she's referring to that effort trap. If they would just give a little positive goodness of words or even the look on their face, they have no idea how far that could go. Exactly. Exactly. Just a little positivity and building you up from small steps, right? We need to set mini goals and gradually build you up over time because we have to get to the root cause and start developing those skills, not telling you to just do it when those skills are underdeveloped or overwhelmed. So, how do we reset the way we think about this? We're going to do a little practice together. We're going to use 4 steps. The very first step that you see here is notice. Notice what is actually happening. Don't just jump to conclusions. Notice what is actually occurring in this moment. Is the person not starting? Did you get started, but you're drifting off? Are you rushing? Is your child forgetting steps? Are you having a meltdown? Are you having difficulties with emotions? Are you simply avoiding the task? So notice what is actually happening. Once you notice what's actually happening in that moment, then name it. What executive function skill may be involved? So if they're forgetting steps, then that's working memory. If you are rushing, that's impulse control. If you're not starting, then that's task initiation. So first we want to notice, then we want to tie it to what mental process, what skill within executive function is challenged. Okay. Third is where we start training. This is where we stop relying on reminders and start building the underlying skills. Because I know that earlier in our effort trap, we said, just use a planner. How many times have you tried planners and calendars and checklists and to-do lists? Have any of you tried them? Do they work for you? You, Monica says a million times. And Monica, do they work for you? Those calendars and the timers? Monica says never. Ashley says the pile of planners is so high. Stacy says millions and millions and millions and no. So, and Judy says sometimes they work. That's right. Um, so it's really difficult because you hear about these strategies and tips and hacks, and even in some of our webinars, we give you tips and strategies and hacks to use, and we want you to have those strategies in your toolbox. But at the end of the day, we have to develop skills simultaneously. Because, like one of my adult clients said, she said, everyone keeps looking at me and saying, just write a to do list. She said, the to do list isn't the problem. I start every morning with a beautiful to do list. The problem is at the end of the day, I don't get anything done on the to do list. So, why? Okay, so now we can go through this executive function reset. What's actually going on? A variety of things. She's having a hard time starting. She sometimes forgets she has a planner. She may get started on number one, but impulsively jumps down to number three. So, in order for those tips and strategies to work, in order for that to do list to work, let's talk about all the executive function skills we need to develop. First, we have to develop memory so that you remember you have a to do list. Then we have to work on sustained attention so that when you start number one, you have the ability to sustain your attention on number one until completion. We have to work on impulse control so you don't start number one and impulsively jump down to number three. We have to work on filtering distractions. So when you finally get to number two, you're not distracted by people talking outside or people walking into the room. So tips and strategies are good, but number three is train. We have to stop relying on just accommodations and get to the root cause and start developing those skills. Okay. Eliza says, I have no idea how to prioritize. If I start one thing, I'm always thinking, what if this is the wrong choice? I've asked for the simple guidance of where I should start, and I'm told you're an adult. It stings so bad. Absolutely, Eliza, because that it's not that you're an adult and you should have that skill, right? Executive function is a set of mental processes, and unfortunately, no one's born with strong executive function, but we all have the potential to develop it. And that development starts right after birth and continues through our mid to late 20s. But that development doesn't always naturally happen. There are a lot of factors that can inhibit that development, one of which is ADHD. It can be autism, it can be anxiety, it can be depression. More often than not, it is a combination of factors. But the good news is what we know through neuroplasticity is that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you the right challenge and the right feedback, you can create these new neural pathways despite your current wiring. We know age is not a factor. We also know that labels like ADHD are not a factor. If we provide you that right challenge, that right feedback, you can develop these skills. And that's what we're going to talk about here, that skill building. And I'm going to show you how we do that through neurotechnology. So third is train. So first, let's recap because we've been chatting a lot. First is notice what is actually going on. Second is to name the executive function that is tied to that. Third is train, not just accommodations, not just strategies, but train the skill. And then, of course, fourth is transfer and generalization. So when we train it, we're able to transfer and generalize the skills we've learned back into the classroom, the workplace, and at home. Okay, that is the reset. We move from why is this person not doing this to what skill does the brain need to strengthen? That shift matters. That shift in your thinking truly matters. So let's do this together. Let's just practice together. Because if we practice now together, that means in the heat of the moment, that you are then able to apply this executive function reset to yourself. Okay. And Eliza says, wow, thank you so much for your gentle words and positive outlooks. You know, Eliza, like I mentioned, I've been in this field for many years, 3 decades now. And so I know that this is challenging, but I also know that we can help, we can develop these skills. And it often is reframing some things too, so you don't have that negative self-image, that we can shift out of that negative self-image because you are truly very capable. It's just that skill building that needs to take place. So let's think about, as we're doing this together, let's think about one task that takes more effort than it should. Now, I know that you might have a lot of tasks, but some of you said, the job application. Many of you said reading. Some of you said writing reports, filling out forms. So think of one task. If you're here for your child, it might be homework. Eliza said laundry. I'll admit that's mine too. I can get it started. I never finish it. So that is mine. Stacy says paying bills on time. Good. And if you type them in the chat box, you can write it down, but make it physical. Write it down, type it down so you can see it. This is the task that feels harder than it should. Okay, let's start there. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes just to, well, maybe a minute to think about that one task. Sarah says fill in any form. Okay. Georgia, think of one thing. Anything's really broad. So let's just start with one thing. Kristen says job application still. Patrice says clean desk. Excellent place to start. Judy says wash kitchen floor. Monica says writing academic report. Excellent. Good. So almost all of you clean us. Georgia says cleaning. Good. Excellent. So now you have one task that feels harder than it should. So that's the notice part, right? We're recognizing that task. And now ask yourself, what is the hardest part of that task? This is that executive function part. What is the hardest part? Is it getting started? Is it staying with it? Remembering the steps? Ignoring distractions? Managing frustration? Finishing? What's the hardest part? Georgia says cleaning is hard for her, and it's the starting, which is the difficult part. So, in that mental processes of executive function, starting is that task initiation. So, that's where we have to look at. Stacy says making myself sit down and start. So, again, task initiation. Kristen also says getting started. Patrice says staying on task. So maybe Patrice can start, but then she has a hard time staying with it. Okay, so we recognize, I think almost all of you are saying starting. So we recognize what is challenging. Now we've tied it to, none of you said the most difficult thing is that I just don't care, right? That I'm not putting in effort. No, we tied it to an executive function skill that is underdeveloped, right? So that is where we need to start your plan. And this kind of shift helps us create a better plan because if we call everything a focus problem, right, we really miss what's going on. Neil says, my child's most difficult part of the day is remembering what to do in the morning. We do the same thing every day, but he forgets the steps. Okay, so that's working memory, right? That's another part of executive function, forgetting the steps. That's not just focus. Focus, of course, is interrelated with it, but it's a part of executive function that we know of as working memory, and that can be addressed. Again, once we know what we need to address, we can make a better plan. And we do this within play attention. Again, we look at which areas are challenging, and we can do that assessment with you, or we can just have a conversation if you prefer just a conversation. But I really like this executive function assessment we do because it's so visual, and I think that's just such a great starting point, and it lets us delve a little bit deeper. And then we make your plan based on that. So when we look at all of those areas of executive function, we can then align those into your customized play attention plan. And that's where we can pinpoint the different cognitive skills that right now may be challenging, but required for strong executive function. And then when we start the skill building, that's where we're integrating our neurotechnology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to provide you with the most comprehensive approach available. So, some of you may have seen before, this is our neurotechnology, this is our wearable, the body wave armband. And on the back, there are three sensors. When I slide this armband on my arm, those sensors are now monitoring my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with my mind, or more specifically, my attention alone. And I receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not I truly am focused and paying attention. And that's a really important first step in the learning process. Because right now, we talked about how people say, just pay attention, right? But it's more than one thing. Right now, when someone says, just pay attention, or you say that to your child, typically you think, but I am paying attention. And you may really think that you are, but you just haven't developed what it takes for you personally. So now with neurotechnology, what we're doing is we're taking that really abstract concept and we're making it concrete and controllable. So now you actually see your attention, you feel what you're doing, and you're allowed to practice not only just attention, but all of these other cognitive skills that again may be challenging but required for executive function. So right now on the screen, you should be able to see all of the different cognitive skills that we address within play attention. Because again, attention's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There are all of these other cognitive skills, task completion, working memory, auditory processing, all of these underlying skills we want to strengthen. We want to get to the root. And we do that through our neurocognitive training. So, what you want to keep in mind is these are the skills that we're going to draw from when we're setting up your attention profile, your training plan. And whatever you're working on, whether it's attention stamina or task completion or working memory, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction. And you have to focus back in order to continue. Because remember that neurotechnology is constantly monitoring your attention that tells us how attentive you are, your brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. So you're able to, in real time, see your attention. Once you can see your attention, we can start developing it. And that's the power of neurotechnology. I'm not going to look at you and say, just pay attention. I'm going to provide you with a concrete experience where you see your attention, you feel what you're doing, and you practice. And the reason we integrate attention into all of these areas is because you can have a great teacher, you can have a great counselor or ADHD coach or life coach. But if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual or the process, it's hard to get maximum benefit. So that's why we make certain that no matter what you're working on, you are actively engaged. So I want to share with you, so you get an understanding of that feedback, this first exercise called attention stamina. So for some of you who said, I think Patrice said, my difficulty is staying on the task. So Patrice, within her plan, we're going to put in attention stamina so that she's able to develop that skill of starting and staying with it until you complete it. So I can choose from different characters, and one is this diver. When I click play, the very first thing you're going to see is a transition screen. So in a moment, you're going to see your game is loading, and this is just helping me transition from our conversation into the actual exercise itself. And then once we get past this, I'm going to turn down my volume just a little bit so you can hear me. Now you see my characters at the top of the screen, and my attention meter is white because I'm not paying attention. I'm distracted. I'm talking to you. And so now I'm going to stop our conversation. I'm going to pay attention to my task. Once I'm paying attention, I'm going to be able to swim him all the way down to the bottom of the ocean just with my mind alone, just with my attention. Okay, so I'm going to stop, focus in. And that's as low as it goes right there. Now, I'm going to get off task now. Notice how when I get off task, immediately he starts to float up because I'm no longer as attentive. So, and distraction can be a variety of things. It could be daydreaming, it could be anxiety, it could be someone walks into the room and I can't filter that noise. Immediately I get that feedback. Now I know I have to control that behavior, control that daydreaming, focus in. So you see, it's kind of like a piece of exercise equipment for the brain. We're working areas that right now are weak for you. And by providing you with that constant and immediate feedback, you're then able to develop the self-regulation and self-monitoring you need in order to recognize when you're paying attention, recognize when you're not paying attention, and more importantly, when you're not, you'll know how to correct it because you've given yourself an opportunity to practice it. So I hope you see that difference. So, Eliza, when you were saying, if some people would just give a little bit of encouragement or a little, smile or encouragement, then it would make a world of difference. So here, we're not saying just pay attention. We're providing you with that experience so that you can gradually build up these skills at your own pace. All of the data is stored for you. So you see here, I worked for 1 minute and 37 seconds. Of that time, I was actually paying attention 30% of the time. And my recovery speed, which is from the time I lost my attention to the time I regained it, is right around 17 seconds. So granted, I have some things to work on, right? I have to work on that attention stamina. I have to work on my mental flexibility to transition. But Sheer Genius, the AI that's written within the program, is going to use this data to not only document my progress, but to then set mini goals. So the next time I log in, Sheer Genius will say, okay, yesterday you completed this with 30% attention. Today, let's try 32%. And if you do that, you earn a point. The point goes into your reward system. So Sheer Genius is constantly documenting progress, setting those mini goals, and then tracking benchmarks too, because you'll notice there is a bronze, silver, and gold medal. There are certain benchmarks I have to reach before moving up to intermediate and then to advanced. And the AI is going to document that and move me up when appropriate. And when we move you up, we're going to tie in more processes required for executive function, such as processing speed, impulse control, distractors, and mental flexibility. So it gets a little bit more complex. There are times you're going to have to respond to certain stimuli using the mouse or the keyboard, but you're still driving everything with your attention because that's the foundation of everything, of task completion, of prioritizing, of organizing, of working memory. We have to be able to be actively engaged. Okay. Now, one thing you may have noticed, and I'm going to move back again, I do want to mention though, I'm not going to be able to go through all of these exercises, but if you put in executive function assessment or just typed in assessment, we'll go through all of these because that's where we're going to take the documentation from your executive function profile and then we're going to line it up. So we're going to say, here's the areas we want to improve. And this is how we're going to get there. This is your customized plan, not a one size fits all, where we can guide you through that process. Okay. So we will go through all of these different exercises with you. Or if you don't want an assessment and you just want a one-on-one consultation, you can type in consultation and we can go through all of that just in a conversation with you as well. Stacy says, do you have to continue to keep doing exercise training for building attention to keep it at a high level? And then you said, I have seen this before and I still think it's pretty amazing every time. Stacy, me too. Like I said, I've been using Play Attention for 32 years and I still find it amazing every time and exciting. But there is a graduation period to go back to what you asked. Is there a period of time where we graduate? Do we build those new neural pathways to a point of permanency? Absolutely. That's the end goal. So, what we recommend is that everyone works at least an hour per week, and that hour can be broken up. So it could be two 30-minute sessions. It could be four 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you. So that executive function process, developing those skills that are required for executive function, does uh, can you do more? Absolutely. You can do more than an hour per week. That's just the minimum we recommend. Okay. So if you want to do an hour and a half, that's absolutely fine. Um, Now, in this process, in the beginning, after you're going to start seeing small steps of improvement. So let's say you're doing a 15-minute session. That means you log in, Sheer Genius, the AI is going to give you three different exercises. So it's going to say, okay, Stacy, today we're going to work on attention stamina, time on task, and working memory. Not only that, but it's going to set a mini goal with each one. So you log in, you do your three exercises, you log out, there's a journal, what I did well, what I'm proud of, and then you're done for the day. The next day, you log in, three new exercises, three new mini goals, log out, journal, done. That's kind of the process you're going to get into. Now you're going to start to see good results after about 6 weeks of consistent training, but they're going to be small steps of improvement. The research shows in order to gain permanency, in order for us to know that not only will you have these skills now, but you'll have them 20 years from now. We have to work to that point of permanency, and that usually takes about 40 hours total. So if you're working an hour per week, I would plan on about 10 months of consistent training. But at that point, you will get together again with your executive function or your focus coach, I should say, because everyone here will be assigned a a dedicated focus coach. And everyone asks, is it a real person? It is a real person. So don't worry about that. You'll have an actual person to guide you. And at that 40-hour mark, that's where we're looking at, are you at all the advanced skill options? Has everything transferred and generalized back into the classroom, the workplace, the home? If everything looks good, we'll start graduating from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. What's important to remember is, remember I said one size fits all doesn't work? That's where we're coming to when we look at graduation. I say on average it's 40 hours. Some people it may take a little bit longer, and that's okay. You own the program, your support is unlimited. We continue working as long as necessary. We only start graduating when you have created those new neural pathways and they are permanent. They are yours. Now, can you continue using it, Stacy, for peak performance training? Absolutely. You can always continue using it for peak performance training. I have some colleagues here who use it in the beginning of the day if they have a big presentation. I have some who use it. I have one colleague who uses it every day before he goes out on the tennis court. So you can always use it for peak performance. You just never have to go through that strict 40 to 60 hours. Another thing I should mention is that we do have the attention monitor. So many of you who said that filling out forms, taking notes, writing a report, doing your resume, that's what's difficult, job applications. You can wear the body wave armband while you're doing those tasks, writing a report, reading, filling out that form. As long as you are paying attention to your task, you're going to hear from the computer, good, great. If you start to drift, you'll hear focus, and then you know you're not in that state you need to be in. So that's where we're really encouraging that transfer and generalization and teaching you how to self-regulate while doing actual work tasks. Okay, so really very, very powerful. Okay, so please do keep your questions coming. I know that we are coming up to our end here, but I am going to go through these next few slides, but keep your questions coming. If I don't get to them right away, know that I will come back to them. So I want you to think about, what have you already tried, right? Has it been medication, therapy, tutoring, mindfulness apps, dietary changes? And you haven't failed. You may think, I have tried everything, right? The supports were just not there. So we want to keep in mind, what do we need to do in conjunction with these other areas and get to the root cause in order to start developing these skills. Because like we said, planners and timers, they're a good strategy. But a planner in and of itself, your notebook in and of itself, the person here who said they have millions and millions and millions of planners and notebooks, um, that planner isn't going to teach you how to stay on task, right? It's a strategy you can use, but we have to simultaneously develop those skills. If you have a child, tutoring may help. However, tutoring, you may have brought your child to tutoring, but then they get back into the classroom and now it's not one-on-one and they're not being redirected and they haven't developed the skill to stay focused and on task and filter distractions and self-regulate. Back in the classroom, it's hard. So tutoring alone may not be enough. You may have tried other brain training apps, brain games or brain training apps, and it offers practice, but not necessarily that transfer and generalization. And that, like I mentioned, we've been doing this integration of feedback with cognitive skills and behavior shaping for 30 years. But Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is that integration important? Or can we just simply give you a series of cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about is brain games, and get the same results? So they had 3 different groups of individuals, all identified as ADHD. The first group received play attention, so they had full integration. The second received just cognitive exercises, so brain games on the computer, no feedback technology, and no behavior shaping. And at the end, and the third group had no intervention at all. That was their control. And at the end of the study, the play attention individuals were the only group that showed global improvements. And that's important because global improvements means they didn't just get better in the game. That's not what they were looking at. Global improvements means they transferred and generalized those skills back into the classroom and home. They showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only individuals that, if they started the study and were on medication, because some of them were on, some of them were not, but if they started on medication, those individuals in play attention had an average decrease in their medication, where the other two groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can teach skills, then there may be less of a necessity to mask symptoms. Okay? So, really important to remember that all of these other strategies are good. However, you need to support the brain and get to the root cause and develop skills. And that's what the difference within play attention. We integrate that feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping and provide you the support. We're not going to say, here you go, right? Best of luck to you. We actually provide you a dedicated focus coach. That person is going to set up your profile, take you through an onboarding, and meet with you throughout the process, help you stay consistent so that you have a successful plan in place to develop the skills that you need. And most importantly, we're not only looking at developing the skills within the play attention program, but we're going to help ensure that transfer and generalization back into the classroom, into the workplace. And if you're working with clients, they'll be able to transfer all of those skills that you've taught them in all areas of their life, because that is the critical component. Not that you just get better and play attention, but that you're able to apply the skills. So I hope that gives you a new perspective. We looked at how to get to the root cause, how to look at your specific or your child or your client's specific executive function profile to create a customized plan. So we need to look at your specific profile to customize your plan and develop how we're going to help you along the path. So the assessment, the customized cognitive training plan, and your dedicated support coach to help you every step of the way is all included in your program. And with our summer special, like I mentioned, many of you here today may have actually seen the summer special that we're running. And you can actually take 20% off your customized program that is running through the end of this week. Eliza said, is there, for example, a deal for you to try it? Yes. So you do have a 30-day money back guarantee, and that's with proper use. So there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. One is that you do need to take the onboarding with your focus coach, and you do need to use the program for a total of 4 hours. You are not going to see huge changes within 4 hours, but what that will give you the opportunity to do is actually see if it's the appropriate tool for you. If not, then you can receive your money back. There is a 15% usage fee for the month, which covers your time and your onboarding. Okay. So again, you get a 20% off. The home program is $18.95 typically, but with your 20% off, it will be $15.16. And that comes with a user license for two people. That means at any one time, we can enroll two people into your program. The professional version is typically $25.95. The difference between the home system and the professional system is in the user license. So the home system comes with a user license for two people. The professional system comes with an unlimited user license. So if you have 20 clients you want to enroll tomorrow, you can enroll all 20 of them. And that's simply a one-time fee. There are no continuing fees involved in that. And another exciting program we have is Silver Minds. So many of you here, I know you've attended our Silver Minds programs in the past, and that is an enhancement to play attention, or an option for you. You can do one or the other or both, but Silver Minds is so exciting. It's our cognitive vitality program for seniors, where we have socialization. We work on mindfulness and movement and continuing education. So if you're a senior or you have a senior in your life, then you'd like to look a little bit more into our Silver Minds program, just type in Silver Minds and we'll give you more information on that as well. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your time and your attention, and I look forward to meeting with you in a consultation or at an upcoming webinar very soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.